All right, well, welcome back to Microsoft Office. So just a reminder, we won't be having class tomorrow, but we will on Monday. The President's Day holiday is the following Monday, so I will send out a reminder tomorrow along with the recording of this session. We're going to start with Microsoft PowerPoint, but before we do that, I ran into a little problem yesterday, and I wanted to go back to it. So I opened up my Excel 09 pivot tables, and I don't know if you recall, I was having trouble doing a count based on the number size. So I opened up here Excel 09 pivot tables, and it was right here. I wanted the computer to count sales over $10,000. So what I did, I found my mistake, and it was a simple little mistake, and those are the worst. Well, I shouldn't say the worst. The nice part is they're easy to find once you look for them. The downside is I was hitting myself in the head because it was so obvious once you find it. So anyway, the formula should have been just like I was describing it. Count if, and then the cells G7 through G86, so the range, that was all right, comma, and then in quotes, greater than $10,000. Here's what I did wrong. I had a space here. And so that's why I was getting the error. So I kept looking last night at my $10,000. I thought, okay, I'm gonna take the quotes out now. And I couldn't get it to work. And then after class, I went back to look at it and thought, what in the world is wrong? And you know how I did it? I used a function and let the computer do some of the work for me. And that way it had the layout. Now you see there's no space there. So now I can just put in, the range and everything else. So that's the drawback of using it freehand. Just trying to remember the formulas. So I apologize for that. Simple little thing. Drove me nuts. So anyway, in our list above here, if we count them up, we would have 58 numbers 10,000 or greater. Greater than 10,000. 10,000 is not included because I said larger, but I don't think we have any that are exactly 10,000. So if you look there, yeah. So that is how you could do that. Now, when we use the pivot table, it also showed that in our pivot table just by sorting the sales by their size. So that was supposed to be the demonstration yesterday. Any questions on that? So that's the count if. The other way I would have done this myself, if I had an error and I still couldn't find it, I would have tried to remember another project where I had used count if, go back to it, and then look at it, and then just analyze back and forth. I find that to be very helpful. So it's one of the reasons you get to keep all these wonderful files, is you can use them as a resource to go back and say, how did I do that before? So that was it. Remember I told you spaces or something, and that, I don't know how I didn't see it, but that was the problem. I'll give you a big error right there. All right, so that was Excel, and that kind of wraps up, that's a PS to our wrap up of Excel. So today we're going to start working with Microsoft PowerPoint. So you do have over here a whole new set of files for Microsoft PowerPoint. Just like Word and Excel, there's a program here in the suite that you can select on here. It's the P with the PowerPoint. So I click on PowerPoint, and it starts off pretty much empty because I haven't set up anything yet, so I don't have any presentations. Just like in Word, a file that you create in Word is called a document. In Excel, it's called a workbook. In PowerPoint, it's called a presentation. And the idea is you're basically going to do a little kind of show and tell thing. You're going to do a presentation to get some kind of point across. And it could be if you're conducting a class. It could also be a sequence of events if you're doing a timeline. And a lot of churches will use this as they go through the service. They put up the words for their music and everything, and it works well for that. You can hook it up to a projector. You can also do animations, and you can tell stories with this. And now with some of the tools available to you in PowerPoint 365, you can actually save your presentation as a video and upload it to YouTube. So if you want to be creative and load it on YouTube. There's another program on here that you have available to you called SharePoint, and they're similar to each other. And in fact, you can create something in PowerPoint and convert it to SharePoint and back and forth. And then you can actually develop a website off of it. There are, if you really want to get into websites, there are better programs out there. I mean, PowerPoint's not the greatest, but it will get you started. And the good news is all the skills that you learned in Word and Excel can transfer over. So, you know, it may not be the best, but it can get you going if that's how you want to get started. And then what you do is later on, you know, once you get your website going and making a lot of money on it, or it's very successful, then you can switch over to another program to run it for you. All right, so you will notice across the top of our screen here, just like with Word and Excel, we can start off with a blank presentation. And over here, we've got some templates. And again, that's the good news, is there are plenty of templates from which to choose. Microsoft 365 doesn't have as many as the desktop version, but you can go to Microsoft's website and find a whole bunch. And they basically have different backgrounds and things. We're going to start just by creating a plain blank presentation. So to click here on New Blank Presentation. And your screen should look something like this. So we're going to simulate being in a business that does eye surgery, like LASIK eye surgery. So we're going to set up a presentation for clients that you're able to show them and show them the benefits and how you would go about getting eye surgery. So at the top left-hand corner, you'll see, just like we had before, you can change the name of our presentation. I'm going to call it PowerPoint. Call it 01 LASIK eye surgery. So as you're creating a presentation, the presentation is made up of cells, kind of like Excel was made up of cells, but in this case, they look like individual slides. So on the left-hand side over here, you'll see I've got slide number 1, a first slide. What you're going to do is add slides to this slide, and it becomes a presentation. So I'm going to do a quick copy and then just paste so you can see a few here. So I have 4 slides. Now they're all blank. But this would be a slide deck. And once you put information on them, it becomes a useful slide deck. So you'll hear that sometimes, a deck. They'll call it a deck. When I started, it was just plain presentation and slides, but then you know how slang goes. That became the cool way of saying it. I got a slide deck I want to show you. So you can call it whatever you like. It's just know that the presentation is made up of each of these slides. I'm going to delete the 3 I just put in there because I don't want them right now. And we'll start with the first slide. So you also have different slide types. You can put different types of information in here. It's very common to do what we have here, which is a title slide. So you start off with a title slide. And it's almost like a book where you have chapters and titles. So you'll notice on the left side, it's completely blank. But on the right side, I have a couple of boxes or placeholders. And that's the way PowerPoint works. Each slide has different placeholders for what you're doing. So you'll see here, it says click to add title. And then down here, it'll say click to add subtitle. So what you're able to do is you can use the slide layouts as they come and basically build a whole presentation just from scratch, just by keying things in here. You'll also notice that just like with Word in Excel, we have on the right side over here, a little drop-down triangle. That works the same way. It's how many tools do you want to see at once? And again, same trade-off as before. The more tools you see up here, the less room you have to work with down here. And it just kind of depends on how you need to work with it. Okay, so you can always shrink it back up and turn them off and on at different times. For now, I'm going to do that. So far, we only have one slide in here. So we're going to add a couple more. So what I want to do is I want to insert a new slide. Now I could copy and paste it, but this time when I insert it, I want it to be a little bit different. It's going to be a different style. So I'm going to use the insert ribbon up here. Or I can go down here to new slide. So new slide is a little faster. So I'm just going to click on that. And you'll see here are all the slide types. Now in the desktop version, you actually get a few more, but you know, here's the thing. Any slide can become any other type of slide. In other words, once you select a slide type, you're not stuck with it. You can always change it. And people do change them a lot, depending on what the needs are. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new slide. And I'm going to scroll down here. And I want title and content. So you'll see this one. This one has different placeholders. It says click to add title and then click to add text. Now again, on the left-hand side, they both look blank. And if I were to run this presentation, that's all it would be, is a blank slide. These placeholders never show up. Whether they're here or not, when you run the slide presentation, they will not appear. Okay, so they're going to be replaced by something you've keyed in, or they are going to have nothing, which means they won't display at all. All right, so let's go to slide one. So for our first slide, we want to name our company here. So I'm going to type in Patterson Eye Center. And you'll notice that on the left-hand side, under my preview, sure enough, there's the text. So see, only the information that you add is going to appear on the slide. So those slide placeholders never appear. And then for our subtitle, it's going to be Laser Eye Surgery Unit. Once again, as with Microsoft Word, you do have spell check going on, and the autofill and the autocorrect. So all those tools do apply to PowerPoint because you do use a lot of language. And then we also have the ability to change our fonts. Now you'll notice when I click in the background of the slide, nothing has been selected. But like with Microsoft Word, when I click on the words Patterson Eye Center, I get this box with 8 circles around it. And they work just like we did with our pictures that we inserted in our documents, meaning those little circles, if you hover over them and get 2 arrows resizes, 4 arrows moves. So if I click on the line, I can move it up and down, left, right, all over. And then just like our Microsoft Word, we have this little arrow that's with a circle. I click on that, I can turn it at an angle to make it more interesting. So that's how these work. And like I said, the good news is it's just like Microsoft Word. So being just like Microsoft Word, I'm going to show more of my tools here so I can see all the font changes here. Now I can only see these when I'm clicked in a text box. When I'm out of it, see they're grayed out. So if you're saying, wow, I want to change the font size, how come I can't change it? You have to click somewhere in the text box. Once I have it, I'm going to select it all here, and I want to change this now to Times New Roman. So it works just like before. I can start typing in Times New, I'll spell it right, New Roman. Oops. There it is. And I'm gonna make it to 60, 54 points. There it is. The other thing I needed to do was select all the text first. There it is. So just like before with Word, you can now see the difference in the type styles. I want to change the laser eye surgery unit to Times New Roman as well. So this time I can use the recently used, which is showing me Times New Roman at the top because I just used it, and now they're the same. When the presentation runs, you will only see what's in this white square. All right. Everything that's not in here, in other words, anything that's over here, if it's not all completely onto the square, you won't see. That is the way you design it, is you work within the square. However, there are times where you might have things half off the square because you just want to show, a certain picture or a certain size of it. Also, when we get into animations, it can be a technique to have something fly in from outside the square. So you might end up doing that too. All right, so now we have one slide. Okay. So now we're going to go in and we're going to do our next slide. And this is very common to have a bulleted list. So again, you'll see it says click to add title. So this title is the title of the slide, not necessarily our presentation. So in this case, what we're going to do is talk about our laser eye surgery unit. So I'm going to type in laser eye surgery unit. This time, just to be different, I'm going to leave the font as it is, and then I'll click in the next box. When I do, you'll see this bullet. So if you remember from Word, you do have the controls for the bulleted list up here. It defaults here to a bullet. If you don't want it, you can turn it off. But in our case, in this case, we do. We're going to put in a few items about this laser eye surgery unit. So we're going to say first that it opens on March 22nd. When I hit enter, I go to the next line and you see I automatically get a bullet. And then just like with Word, if you want, you can go and change the bullet type. If you want arrows, you can look at the list. There are tons of them. This time in 365, I only get a few, but you can, in the desktop version, or even if you want to just create your own, have almost unlimited types of bullets. All right, our next item is who is the head of our laser eye surgery unit. So we're going to say it's headed by Marjorie Hellman from the, oops, my fingers are off, Western Eye Surgery Clinic. Hit enter. Ready for our third item. Safe, fast, and reliable. Covered by most insurance carriers. Oops. The key to clearer vision. All right, so I clicked on the background. So now you'll see how it's going to appear in my presentation. Just when you're working with PowerPoint, you're kind of using a lot of the same principles we discussed with Microsoft Word, in that you're trying to balance out the page. Like right now, I have a lot of space at the bottom. So it almost makes it look like there's more to come. There should be more bullets. Well, I don't. So what I want to do is I want to stretch out these bullets. Well, easy to do, because just like with Microsoft Word, we have ways of doing the line spacing. So you have a tool up here, the line spacing. And I'm going to do it to double space. So I clicked here, click 2. Or if I wanted to, I get my old line spacing options. It's almost exactly like we had with Microsoft Word. You'll see, alignment left, the spacing before and after, multiple spacing, before text. You can do indentations like hanging and special indents. It's identical. Now it stretches it out some. So this is a floating text box with my bulleted list. If I want to put a graphic or something over here on the right, I might have to squeeze this over. Well, here's the good news. As I squeeze it over, you'll see anything that needs to be adjusted gets wrapped around, and even the font shrunk a little bit in order to fit it in the box. So you can still manually adjust that. You can also stretch it up a bit and over again. Oops, I dragged it instead of stretched. I'm going to leave it out to that size. And there we go. Now we have 2 slides in our presentation. Here's a little trick if you're actually doing this for a presentation in front of a group. They say that even over fear of flying, fear of public speaking is the #1 fear people have. PowerPoint can help you with that, because what you do is you make a list like this. And then these are kind of your guides. So what you do is as you come to this slide, you talk about opens March 22nd. Well, maybe you have a little to say on that. And then you look at the next point, and then you talk about how great the Western Eye Surgery Clinic is. Oops, I forgot a capital S here. And how, we're going to get that success here. And then you can talk about the surgery. So you can talk about these points, and they're actually your guides as a presenter to go through and talk about each of these things. If there's a complaint about PowerPoint, is it can be kind of dry, but it just depends on how you present it. In other words, if you say, well, our laser eye surgery opens March 22nd, it's headed, and just read these points, you could have handed me the paper. I didn't need to sit here and listen to you read them to me. So that's why you give a little detail. And then the other thing is, just always stop and ask people questions. So when you're giving your presentation, you might say, do you know anybody who's had laser eye surgery, or whatever it is that you're presenting? Ask them if they have any experience, and let people interact. And if they know they're going to have a chance to talk, they're more engaged. So PowerPoint can get you there, but it still takes a little practice and craft to make it very interesting. The other thing that happens is people put too much into these bullet points, and the slides are better if they're broken up into separate points. So for example, let's say I was going to talk a lot about March 22nd and how that's a goal and all the things we had to do. Well, that might be in its own slide. If I say, I want to talk about it enough, I think I'll just create a slide that says our laser eye surgery opens March 22nd, and then talk about where it's going to be and how we had to do all the stuff we had to do to get it ready and things like that. And then you move on to some other things. So you kind of have to balance out how you do these bullet points. All right, so we're good so far. We got 2. Now we're going to do a different kind of slide. So I'm going to click on my new slide option here. And the one I'm going to do is actually going to be the comparison. But I'm also going to make a mistake here and say, I'm going to click on this to content. So it inserts a to content slide, which means there's 2 text boxes underneath the title. So I look at it and say, oh, actually, I wanted the other one. Well, that's not a problem because over here, you do have some ways of manipulating your slides. So one of the things you'll see is there's this layout button. As long as the current slide is selected, I can see it here because slide number 3, it's in the red. That's the one it'll change. When I click this layout, I can now switch to comparison. So remember I said earlier that basically every slide can become every other slide? You can do that. And you can even do that with text in it. So you can always switch it around. And again, it's one of those things where you sometimes you change a slide type and see how it looks. And if you like it, keep it. If not, change it to something else. All right, so now we're going to do the pros and cons. And the question is laser eye surgery for you? So we ask the question at the top, and then you'll see we have now 4 text boxes underneath. So this is kind of almost like a subtitle, one for each side. So this is going to be the pros and the cons, pluses and minuses. Here's what's good if you do it, here's what's not so good. So you'll see it starts off with a bulleted list. I'm going to change my bulleted list to a numbered list. So you'll see up here the tool is numbered, and I'm going to use the number and the parentheses. And you'll see it changes here. You'll see in a minute, just like with Microsoft Word, having the numbers can be useful because you can refer to them quickly. So here are our pros. First is virtually painless. And you'll notice I haven't been using periods because these aren't true sentences. You don't have to. You have to decide whether you want to make them all sentence case or all uppercase. You can always change that. I'm sorry, not all uppercase, but each word with the first letter capitalized, like titles. It's kind of title case. So it kind of depends on what your goal is. Because I'm only going to use a couple of words on each of these, I'll go ahead and make them with each word capital in the first letter. So it's a fast procedure. Immediate improvement. And covered by most insurance plans. And again, I got my wraparound working for me. So now I'm going to go to the con side. And I'm going to change it again. So it's numbered list instead of bulleted. And by the way, again, if you decide you don't like the numbers, you can always switch back to the bulleted list. So for our cons, we're going to say not everybody is a candidate. Cost, number 2, be a little expensive. And there's some risk of corneal damage. Okay. I mentioned before, one of the advantages of using the numbered system here is as you're done presenting the slide, somebody might ask a question and they'll say, well, how fast will it take me to get better after I, come out of surgery? We say, look, here number 3 under our pros, immediate improvement. We expect that within, whatever it is. So you can refer to the items on our bulleted list there. See, it'd be harder to refer to it. Like you could see the 3rd item if I want to talk about the 3rd. Where here I can say number 3 under pros and direct everybody's eye to it and then talk about it. There's also a little presentation trick going on here. If you have an outcome that you prefer your audience to believe or to go for, what you do is under pros is you put more pros than there are cons. So we had 4 pros and only 3 cons. And in the cons, there's cost. right? But we've already mentioned in the pros, like in this case, it's covered by most insurance plans. So when you see presentations, sometimes they'll do that. And it's not manipulation. I mean, as long as they're all true, it's, very true. But at the same time, they're kind of anticipating people's biggest questions. And they're going to show you, like, the cost is not as bad as it sounds. It might be a con, but, really it's not. And sometimes they even try to turn around and say that the cost is a plus because you get what you pay for, and things like that. So it's only the best technology. So it kind of depends on the presentation. What'll happen is if you give the same presentation more than once, you get used to it, and you can anticipate a lot of people's questions because a lot of people ask very similar questions. And when they do, you can even adjust your slideshow so that it will adjust for that and accept those activity or those questions and work them into your presentation. All right. So now, as an example here, we have 3 slides. Kind of boring, just black and white, but it is a slideshow. So I'm going to click on the first one, and I'm ready to watch my slideshow. I'm going to do a preview of what it's going to look like. So I have a ribbon up here, tool, it says slideshow. So click on slideshow. And on the left-hand side over here, I have my controls to watch it. So the first one is play it from the beginning. So take it from the top. You'll also notice we have one from current slide. In our slideshow here, we've got 3 slides. That's not very much, but you could have 300 depending on what you're doing. So sometimes you're working on, say, this slide here, and you don't want to see all the slides before because those are okay. You've already tested those, you're happy with them. You want to start here. So you can start it from any point in the slideshow. You'll also see there's present in Teams and present live. You can set these up to do online slide presentations. And with Microsoft Teams, which you do have access to, you can have people join you and you can do it virtually. Everybody loves those virtual meetings. But we're going to do it from beginning. So I'm going to click on from beginning. Now you'll see my screen goes to black and it comes up. There's slide number 1, Patterson Eye Center. To make the slide advance, I can click anywhere in the background, or the space bar on the keyboard will take me to slide number 2. So now I give my presentation about slide number 2. We open to March 22nd. This is the key to clear vision. Done. Again, I can click with a mouse, slide number 3. I mentioned you can click with a mouse. They also have remote control mice, or if you get into this and become a professional presenter, there's actually a little handheld remote control device that does everything the mouse does. It has a button, but it also has a scroll that you can scroll with your finger if you want to go back and forth. You'll see later on there are ways that you can draw and doodle on your presentation as you're going along if somebody asks a question or if there's something you want to emphasize. And so those controllers, they're not very expensive, under $100, but they allow you to be completely disconnected from the computer that's doing the presentation. So I click it one more time, and you'll see we get this end of slideshow. So that was the last slide. Click again to exit. And it'll take us back to our presentation. I'm going to change my ribbon back to the home ribbon. So here's another common technique. We have at the beginning a Patterson Eye Center. Sometimes at the end of the presentation, you want to bookend it. In other words, you started with the Patterson Eye Center, you want to end with that. So I want to duplicate this slide. So there's a couple of ways to do that. One is, I mentioned these tools up here. You do have this option here to duplicate slide, or I can come over here, click on slide 1 on the left-hand pane, and Control-C to copy and Control-V to paste. It works just like the other programs. Or the third way is I can right click on it and you'll see here's duplicate slide with the same kind of logo that I have in my toolbar. So it's a little quicker to do. But I'll click on this. All right. So it duplicated it, but it put it right under slide number 2. Well, that's not where I want it. I want it at the bottom. So just as with the pictures in Microsoft Word, you can drag and drop. So I'm going to grab slide number 2, drag it, scroll down till it comes to the bottom, and you'll see now that I'm under slide 4 and let go, it'll renumber them. So what was slide 2 is now slide 4. And so we start and end with the same slide. The other way to do that, and it is good to know the second way, just in case you do have a slideshow with an enormous number of slides, is I can right click on it and cut it. Or make another copy of it. And then scroll to where I want it, click close to slide 4 here, and paste. Then just pop it down 1. Why that's important? And then I can delete slide 2. It can be important because, again, if you have a very long slide deck, it will be difficult to keep scrolling down. So if you just copy it in memory and then paste it down below, you can get where you want it. Or there's also the drag and drop. Okay, real quick, let's take a look again. I'm going to go to slideshow from the beginning. You will also notice in the bottom right-hand corner, you do have a little tool here. This one, it's a handy tool, but it's slideshow, and it's basically from where you're located. So the reason they have it down here is so you don't always have to go back up here and go from beginning by clicking on the slideshow ribbon. So either one will work. If you're on slide 1, I'm going to click it. Here it comes. There's my first one, slide 2, slide 3, and slide 4. Okay, let's go back to home ribbon. All right, does that make sense? Okay, let's go back to slide number 2 here. Let's say I did decide that I like this, but it's too many different things at once. So if I look at my last 3 items here, they're related somewhat to my next slide. These 2 are kind of different. So what I want to do is break this up and basically break it in half. So here's how I want to do it. I'm going to duplicate slide. This time I use the right click. So now I've got slide 2 and slide 3 that are exactly the same. I'm going to click on slide 2, go down to my bulleted list here, and select all the way from safe down to clearer vision. And I'm going to delete those with the delete on the keyboard. Then, because I got some extra room, I'm going to shrink down the size of my bulleted list here. Then I'm going to edit slide 3 and kind of do the opposite. I'm going to get rid of the first 2, by selecting the text, hitting the delete key on the keyboard, and I'll adjust it down a bit. So see how we did that? So we took one slide and broke it into 2. And you could do that, especially, like I said, if it's a presentation you're giving more than once, there's nothing like presenting it live to a live audience. And as you do it, you may say, you know, I think it would be a really good idea for this one slide to be 2 slides, and you can adjust it as you go. You can also turn this into a boss and say, okay, here's what I plan to present. And the boss says, no, I want this into 2 slides instead of just 1. It's too much into 1. If you go online and you read the gripes about PowerPoint, biggest gripe is a lot of stuff gets kind of boring. And like I said, they just read the slide show to you. That's not very interesting. And the other thing is too many bulleted lists, because there's a habit to just do a whole bunch of bulleted list items and say, okay, I'm done with it. So you kind of have to determine what needs to be a bulleted list and maybe what needs to be its own slide. And if you're making a bulleted list, what should be on it? So those are the creative sides to it, and along with the technical side with PowerPoint. And I'll tell you, one of the other uses for PowerPoint, and you'll see this a lot in either like funerals, weddings, or graduations, is they will use PowerPoint just to put pictures on. And you'll see later, there's some animations you can do and some pretty cool graphic things. So you can have it be just like it sounds, like a slideshow of photos. And like I saw one at a wedding where it was let's see, the bride and the groom as babies. So it went bride baby, groom baby. Then they were like 2 years old. Bride baby, or bride 2-year-old, groom 2-year-old. And so they flipped back and forth. So you could watch them both advance in age till they got together, and then it showed them their pictures together. That was pretty neat. So that was one way to do it. You'll see that a lot with like even graduations. They'll show all the pictures of all the graduates at the top, and they'll use a projector. And you can do a projector with this. Projectors have dropped way low in price. And so you can even do a family presentation if you're going to a family reunion, have them send you pictures. You can use the projector. You can even do like outdoor movies and things like that. So there's a lot of uses for projector. Plus it's kind of fun to have. And like I said, the prices come way, way down. All right, so we have our first layout, but it's a little drab. It is now 6:53, so we'll take a 10-minute break. When we come back, we're going to add some color and make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, we are back. So as I mentioned, right now we have a workable presentation, but it is quite dry. So there are a few things we can do to liven things up. Up at the top of our menu bar, we have a design toolbar. So it comes up with a design ribbon. On the left-hand side here, we have a number of choices. And it's just like when we're working with Excel worksheets or even with Word, where they had some layouts, some pre-made layouts. So does PowerPoint. And there are a lot of them. Right now, we're just using a blank black and white one. But you'll see, even with this current theme, which is highlighted here, we have some over here. These are called the variants. The variants are basically spins on a similar style. So right now, you went black and white. I have this one variant 2. I can click on that, and it doesn't really do much. But the next one over flips them around, meaning flips the colors around. So now instead of black on white, it's white on black. So there's a different style. It also can make a difference if you're projecting this on a wall, what color the wall is going to be, or if you have a big screen, what color the screen is. If you project it with a black background onto a white screen, you will see the border, meaning unless it completely fills up the screen, even by shape and size, you'll see that border around the black area. Okay, it'll make it dark. So if you don't want to, I would suggest using the black and the white background. Then what happens is it would still technically project white light to that border, but because the background's white, it just blends into the background. So you don't get that distinct size difference. So that can make a difference too. The good news is you can create different presentations. You can do the same presentation, but make different copies and adjust them to however you're going to present them. So some things look better on the big screen, some things look better online. And again, you can adjust as you go. So let's take a look at another theme. So all these are called themes, and we're going to try the next one over. So this theme is called Atlas. And you'll see it did make a huge difference on my first slide, on my second slide, third slide, fourth slide. All right. The first and the last slide work fine, but it does mess these up. So I have a choice. If I want to stick with this theme, I'm going to have to go back and adjust my text boxes and things. Or the other option is to check the variants. Now, usually a variant is basically the background and the colors and doesn't do a lot as far as the layouts. So you'll see my variant 2 made it blue, but still messed up slide 2 and 3. Okay, so in this case, maybe I don't want this one. So let's try Madison. Let's take a look at this one. In this case, kind of the opposite happened. The first slide, it got smushed around some, and now they're overlapping. But in slide 2, that actually looks presentable in slide 3. So see how that works? And it's nothing wrong with this because I could just grab these and slide them over, and make adjustments. On the other hand, I could keep looking. So let's check another theme. This one's called Ion. This one's better. So it gives me a colorful background. And my other slides still work. So I don't have to do as much adjusting. In fact, no adjusting necessary. Okay. On the right side, I don't know if you've noticed this, you get the designer popping up. And this is PowerPoint trying to offer you some suggestions. And what it will do is it'll actually look at the context of your slides. So it sees its Patterson Eye Center. So on the right hand side here, you'll see I actually have an eye in the background. There we go. So I can select that. And then as I slide down or scroll down, I can see some other options. So you always have this designer. And then the other option is you can design things completely from scratch by adding colors, backgrounds, pictures, anything you like. The good news is having all these makes it very handy, and you have so many choices that you really get a lot of different options. So here's another style. And this one works out pretty well with ours. Here's the downside. If you are trying to make your presentation look distinct, one problem with using a templates is it's the same templates everybody else is using. And if you've been to enough presentations, you'll see them using them over and over again. In fact, to the point where you can say, oh, I know that one. That slide, that's integral. We've used that. And it would look like this. So you get this pattern background. So just like with the clip art, you can go through these and their variants and spend a lot of time doing this and get lost in it because they're all very interesting. On the other hand, you could just kind of pick one and go with it, or you can adjust it. And that's what I would suggest. If you pick one of these, like even parallax here, you can customize it. So this is how it would look. And then when I select my designer, I get that little background. So even that gives enough of a twist. Or I can even go this way. See, so the presentation is looking back at the people looking at the presentation. So there's tons to choose from. You can actually buy some if you want to spend the money. Some professionals make some. The other thing that will happen is some companies or some organizations will determine what your theme is always supposed to be. In other words, they have one that's going to be the same for the whole company, and they want them all to look alike. So they will do that, and they'll say, okay, this is the one you use, and then you just work around it. Now in this one, you'll see my bullets kind of overlap that drawing in the background. So I probably want to separate that out. So if I wanted to keep this, I would go and have to adjust those. But I'm going to back up, and the way I'm going to back up is undo. It's a Control Z, Control Z, and go back. So again, that's the good news. As you thumb through these, you can always undo, or I can Control Y, redo, and it takes me forward through all the things I've already looked at. So this is the one I wanted. So this one is our ion theme. I do have the variants, and here's you'll see the variants in the colors. And you'll notice at the bottom in our variants and in our theme, there's a little color table. And what that tells you is the theme colors that will happen automatically. Okay, I'm going to go back to variant 1. And here's what I'm referring to. See that down there, and even here on a variant. It'll tell you these are the default colors, meaning like when it puts a little graphic over here, it's going to be that red. Well, you see that's in our color table. So it's giving you a hint as to when you put in different elements, what colors are going to automatically be. Now, again, you can change them. Remember, there's 16 million colors to choose from. However, a lot of people just use the defaults. And what they have supposedly done is made sure there's no color conflicts. So if you remember, I said when you have a dark background, you have to use a light color. If I go back to my home ribbon and I change my font color, say to dark black here, okay, now that gets really hard to see. But having the white writing stands out better. So when you're looking at these designs, these are all done for you. They've already done all that work to make sure there's no conflicts. That doesn't mean you can't override it. It doesn't mean you can't override it for the worse either. You know, sometimes you You think, oh, I want to make this darker, and then you do, and then when you see it on the screen, it doesn't show up very well. All right, so I'm going to stick with this. And now I want to run it and see what it looks like. So I'm going to go to my home ribbon. Sorry, not home. I want to see my slideshow. So I'm going to click on the slideshow ribbon. And from the beginning. And in PowerPoint, the keyboard, if you do the function F5, that runs the PowerPoint presentation from the beginning. Here's my first slide. Now you'll notice when the type came over, it actually had a little animation to it. Watch again when I click my mouse and watch the bullets as they come across. See, this time it just appeared all of a sudden, everything all at once. Click again, same, everything all at once. Now watch when I click for my last slide. So there are ways to animate the text, and we're actually going to get into that. We're going to do that later on. I'm going to turn off my designer so I have more room to work with. I'm going to go back to my home ribbon. When you get into some of these animations, you do have to be careful that sometimes the animations are so interesting that they become the focus for your audience. They're all watching that instead of what you're saying. They're like, wow, how'd you do that? Oh, I want to do that on my slideshows. I got to figure out how you did that. And instead of paying attention to you, they're paying attention more to the technical side of the presentation. All right, so we have our slideshow. We're going to go to slide 3 now. And we want to insert a new slide down below. So it's going to be between 3 and 4. So by clicking on 3, I can do new slide. And it's going to be the to content. So you'll notice when I insert it, I clicked on 3 and it inserted it below. So it inserts it below whatever slide you've selected. So even if it didn't, let's say I was on 2 and I inserted it, I can drag and drop. So I can shuffle them around like this. Okay, now we're getting to having enough slides where I can't see the bottom slide when I'm looking at the top slide. So the more you add, the fewer you can only see 3 at once here. Even if I shorten up my menu, my ribbon, I can still just barely see 4. So we do have a tool that helps us see the presentation as a whole, kind of like the forest from the trees. If you go to your view ribbon here in the upper right-hand corner, you've got the slide sorter. Click on that. And now you can see all the slides together. And you can shuffle them around. So again, if I wanted 4 to be over here after 5, I could do that between 2 and 3. And as I drag and drop, they automatically readjust. So you'll always have that as an option too. And the more slides you get, the more handy that is, because it shows you a bunch at a time. I'm gonna go back to my home ribbon. By the way, we do have a shortcut for that. I'm gonna turn the view back to normal. So under view, gotta click normal. And there we go. Let's go to the home ribbon. And here's the shortcut. In the lower right-hand corner, you do have a slide sorter tool. So it's right there. So you can always do that quickly and then go back to the editing view. So you can switch back and forth that way. That way you don't have to go up to the tool ribbons. All right, let's get to slide 4. This one is going to be a comparison. We're going to call this laser eye surgery facts. Now you'll notice my bullets are triangles. I did say before that there are a lot of different triangles. That's the native style for this design. If you're using this design, that's how they're going to come up. But again, you can change them. I'm going to go ahead and leave them. So now we're going to say LASIK is the most common refractive surgery. So a little piece of information about LASIK surgery. I hit enter. And then one other advantage of it is a relative lack of pain. Hit enter again. For our next two items, we're going to say almost immediate results. In parentheses, usually within 24 hours. And then both nearsighted and farsighted can benefit. Okay, I've got my last two items here. I'm going to select these, cut them, and paste them over here. So that's the style for the two style list, but looking at them, I think it was better the other way. So I'm going to select here, cut it again, click next to pane, hit enter, and paste again. Or I could have used undo, undo. So here's the other thing we could do. Here's the undo. If we decide that this would be better as a single slide or a single set of bullets here instead of side by side, I can convert this to the other style just by clicking on this text box, deleting it, grabbing this text box, and enlarging it. Then, I'll get my tools back here. I want to increase the font size. So from 18 to 20 to 24. Then I want to increase the line spacing to 2. There, that looks better. Okay. The other way to do this, and it's up to you, it gets you the same end results, is while I'm here, I could click on the slide layout option. And you'll see it's set to 2 content. And I'll say, no, I think I like it better as title and content. And see what it did? It got rid of my, the designer back, it got rid of my extra box and stretched out this text box so it's larger. It still didn't do my adjustments, so I still have to do those manually. So I'm going to increase the font size and the bullets increase with it. And then I'm going to increase the line spacing to 2. So either way, as much as when you look at these slide types, you know, you think that they're kind of sacrosanct, that you don't want to be messing around with them, but you can. They're just there for your guides. So like even this 3 column, if you were to create this from scratch, that would take a little time. So I would, if I wanted 3 columns, I would definitely use the 3 columns. On the other hand, after putting the first 2 columns, like we saw just now, I might want to get rid of one. So rather than, just making the changes myself, I can select the to content and it will adjust. If we had 3 columns and we had some information in each one and it's going to delete one, it'll warn you that it's going to delete it. So what you need to do is move it over into the other column before you delete it. All right, so now our laser eye surgery facts goes into, is laser eye surgery for you? So see how we just added to it? Let's go back to slide 4. And let's take a look at our slideshow. And I'm going to run it from the beginning. So I'm going to click on my slideshow from beginning, and let's see how it changed. Here's our first slide, second slide, third slide. There's our new one, the 4th slide, and the 5th slide, pros and cons, and finally the 6th slide, the end. You can actually put the end, although that's kind of corny. But, it's okay. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll put the end and then questions and put a big question mark. And that's the cue to accept questions from the audience. All right, let's go back to slide 4. So there are times where when you've added a slide or you have a slide there, you're not sure you want to use it. Like say we're going to give a presentation and we haven't used this slide before. But I kind of want to go back and check the facts before I start saying them. So one thing you can do is right click on the slide, and what you have the option to do is hide the slide. See this hide slide? If you do that, you see how it's grayed out now? So it's shaded out, so it's still there and I can still edit it. So if I want to put an exclamation point, so I can still make changes to it. But let's take a look when I run my slideshow. What happens? Everything starts the same. There's slide 3. You see we skipped right over it. So when you're working on draft slides, you can make them hidden, but they're never hidden to you, but they are hidden when you give the presentation. You can also do that if you're giving, let's say you have a long version of your presentation and the short version, and you want to take out certain slides, you can just leave them as hidden. And then when you're ready for the long version, unhide them. And then back to the short version, rehide them. That way, you're not working with multiple slide presentations. If you find you do that a lot, probably at that point, the better thing is either to make a note of which slides need to be hidden, or save them as 2 separate presentations and call one long version, the other one short version. The downside of doing that is if you did have a change, let's say that they decided it is not now the most common refractive surgery and you want to take out this first bullet, you'd have to do it twice, and remember to do it twice on the 2 different presentations. But here's some other good news. If you are working and doing different presentations, you can copy and paste from different slideshows and extract some slides you've done. Like if we wanted this one, I could click on this slide, copy it, switch over to another presentation, paste it in, and then I don't have to duplicate my work. So that makes it much nicer. All right, so now we've got our slideshow. I'm going to unhide slide 4. So it's a right click. You see the hide slide. By the way, I don't know if you notice this. So when it was hidden, I right click on it. It doesn't say unhide. Remember when we were doing Excel and working with the tabs, it does say unhide or show all or something. This case, you just have to click the hide slide again, and then it comes back. So you can always tell if it's shaded out or not, and that's the key. Okay, so we have some more facts to enter. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new slide, and it's going to be the to content. So it's going to be, oops, I mean to do that. A new slide, to content. Okay, this one is going to discuss the cost of eye surgery. So our title is Cost of Eye Surgery. So now we're going to have a bulleted list again. And we're going to start off by saying typically as low as $4.99 per eye. And enter. Custom options can significantly change cost. And then financing is available to some candidates. Okay. You'll see under my word typically, I do have a blue underline. It's kind of hard to see. I do have the ability, by the way, to zoom in my right-hand side, my corner here. And say I've got a zoom. You also can go to view and you've got a zoom. And this will allow you to zoom in on the window. Let's see, I'm gonna get 200%. So it does show you a close-up view. On the other hand, you can't see much of anything. You kind of have to scroll around to find it, but I want to go to that typically so I can see. It's hard to see with my theme, but there is a blue underline. So if you remember from Word, you know, there's a blue underline. It's a grammar question. And what they want is a comma. So typically as low as $4.99 per eye. So the grammar and the spell check are still working. And then I can zoom out. Now, if I want, I can use the view, or let's say I already switched over to my home ribbon. I do have the tools down in the lower right-hand corner because it's a very common one. And just by clicking that 200, here's my options. So I can zoom in even closer to 400%, go to 100%, or even zoom back to 33%. So that's the range. Or this is the one that's commonly used is fit, meaning fit to the window. So when I click to fit, see how it fits in the window? If I change my menu ribbon now by clicking this up triangle, see how it expanded even further? So if I set the zoom to 100%, it stays that size, whether I have lots of windows, my expanded ribbon open, or the condensed one. If I say fit, it'll always fit to the biggest it can and still show all in the window. Okay, so now here over on the right-hand side, oh wait, before we do that, I wanted to adjust this by increasing my font. And you'll see in this way, unlike with Word, it's not going to give me the feedback of telling me what size it is. The only way to see that is to expand the ribbon, and then it's there. So if I undo, see it was 18, and now I can see it increase, or I can select the 24. And then while we're here, I'm going to use the line spacing to 2.0. And that spreads it out some. Okay. While we're here, so you remember our layout was to content. It doesn't say to typed lists. It's to content, meaning this content over here can be another list, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a picture. So I'm going to do that. I want to insert. And you'll see we have a couple of options here. We've got pictures, shapes, icons, smart art. All right. What these are let's start with smart art. Smart art will actually let you use things like if you're working on a hierarchy, or let's say the job positions list, and trying to show who the boss of whom is. You could do it here, or if you're showing a process like step 1, step 2, step 3. So those are kind of interesting, and we're going to be using those later on. You also see you have icons to choose from. These are just basic black and white pictures, and those can be useful for effect. We also have shapes. You can draw specific shapes. We've got a little happy face. These are the same shapes from Microsoft Word, by the way. And the ones that are really useful are things like call outs and stars and banners, if you really want to highlight something. Or we've also got our pictures, and that should sound familiar because we did that with Microsoft Word. So we did a picture of the Raven. And again, we have some options here. So we can insert a picture in our PowerPoint from this device, meaning your computer. So if you have something on your hard drive that you want to include, say you took a picture of the office, you're working in the eye surgery office and you took a picture of the office and you want to include that here. You could do that just by uploading it into your PowerPoint presentation. You can also use OneDrive if you store the photos here on the OneDrive. You can use stock images. Stock images are, we had these before with Word. These are ones that Microsoft has included, and they're not bad, but you have less copyright restrictions or fewer copyright restrictions on these. However, I'm not going to use that. I'm instead going to go to Pictures and then Bing Pictures. Now, remembering, of course, that when I use pictures, these are from the internet and they can be other people's property. Once again, as a reminder for the copyright laws, if you're using it for an educational purpose, you're able to use it. And usually if you're using it for something local, it's not a big deal. But what happens now is so many things can become national and international that you might run into problems. If you're creating this presentation, you turn it into a video, you upload it into your social media or YouTube or something, then a lot of people can see it, and maybe somebody who owns the picture will see it. I'll say, hey, you're using my picture. What they usually do is send you a cease and desist notice. You say, okay, fine, I'll pick another one. Or, like in this case, I'm going to search for an eye. You can take a picture of your own eye, and then you own the copyright to that picture. So you'll see we have a lot of different options in eyes. I'm just going to pick this drawing one. Same as before, you got this funnel. And with Microsoft Word, if you wanted to see like only clip art, you can select that. And then you get the drawings of eyes rather than actual eyes. On the other hand, if I just wanted to see the actual eyes, I could do photograph. And that's pretty much going to be, regular eyes, human being eyes. And then the same is also true that if you want the image to be by itself, so in other words, the eyeball is by itself, I can select transparent. See how these don't have a background? That means they'll pick up the background of your presentation when you paste it in there. When we were working with Word, it wasn't that big a deal because most of our documents had a white background, right? So, these all have white backgrounds, so it really didn't show up a lot. In this case, though, with PowerPoint, let me see if I can find one that would be a problem. I think, let's see. Yeah, this one might. So I'm going to select this eye here. And again, you can select more than one. I'm going to insert. And this one did have a little white background. So like in this case, if it didn't, it might blend in too much. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to delete it. I click on my box to insert. I don't have to click on the box to insert, but if I don't, it'll overlay it. And I do want to replace that box with a picture. Let's go to Bing Pictures. Select I. Let's see how this one works. This probably won't be too bad because it's okay. This is a good example. That's bad. See what happened? That white background, it's because it's transparent, it's showing through even when I move it here. And that looks terrible. So that's one thing you have to watch when you use transparent, is if you're using some kind of design or some kind of background, is keep in mind that can happen. How do you fix that? Well, there's a quick way to do that. First of all, when you're using PowerPoint pictures, it'll always come with a license attached to it to tell you basically where it's coming from. And again, that's a little disclaimer from Microsoft. So if anybody gets in trouble, they can't sue Microsoft. Everybody wants to, all the lawyers want to sue Microsoft because they have all the money. They could sue me, good luck. They won't get very much. They could sue Microsoft, they could get millions. They could prove they did something wrong. So that's why they tell you here, it's all your responsibility, blah, blah, blah. We understand that, and delete it. So I'm gonna click on this here, get 4 arrows, and I want to delete this placeholder like that. Here's how you can fix these real quick. I'm going to select an oval here, and then I'm going to turn the shape fill to white. And we're going to do this a little bit more later on. And then I'm going to completely cover the eye. Then I have this option to send backwards. So as I start clicking that option, what happens is it'll send it back 1 layer. So you'll see now it's behind my eye. The eye, my eye problem still doesn't change. It's just in front of a white circle. See if I drag it off, you can see it's still going to have that issue. Okay, so you can do this, and you do this a lot with PowerPoint, is you'll have layers. And it's kind of like we did with Microsoft Word, that things are layered on top of each other. And you can resize them like that. The other option is when you insert your picture, and you want to say I, pick one that doesn't have that problem. Yep. So this one is telling me it's all public domain. See, this one already comes with one behind it. Somebody's already done that. So that's the other option. Just pick one that where the transparency doesn't matter. All right, so let's take a look at our presentation, how it's going. I'm going to go to slideshow from the beginning. Slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4, and slide 5 with my image. Slide 6 and slide 7. So see how that integrated? Now, there is a temptation that, well, I've got 1, 2, 3 points here. Maybe I should put 3 different eyes in. What'll happen is if you put too many graphics, they can be distracting. And again, you don't want to distract from your words and what your point is with a lot of clip art. So unlike my 3-year-old granddaughter who believes if a little is good, a lot must be better, and she does that when she's putting sprinkles on cupcakes and we're decorating cupcakes, she just dumps the whole thing on the cupcake and think that was great. And it actually does. I mean, it's very colorful. but not as artistic. So a little goes a long way, and especially with clip art, a little can go a long way. And so usually like just 1 or 2 max. Okay. So let's go down to our final slide, Patterson Eye Center. And I want to put another graphic in. So I'm going to insert picture, go to Bing Pictures. And this time I'm going to type in the word sunrise. So my point being that when you see better, it's like seeing a morning rise all over again. So you'll see there are a number of images here. And I'm going to pick this one here and insert. And it comes over kind of small. That's okay. I'm going to bring it to the top. And then if you remember the little white circles, if I hover over them and see 2 arrows, that resizes. And I can stretch it out. Now the same rule applies from Microsoft Word. I can stretch it out long ways, but it will get distorted. And you can see it's a bit distorted. Now in this case, it doesn't matter too much. It still looks pretty useful. There are some things though, like my eyeball here, if I stretched it out, even though you can see it, it doesn't look good with the background, it still could be a problem because that's way too stretched out. Now it's looking more like cat or something. So I'm going to undo. But in something like this, you can have stretched out because it's a landscape. So it works. All right. So I'm going to click on my picture. And then in the upper right-hand corner, I now have the picture toolbar. This toolbar is just like Microsoft Word. And on the left-hand side, you'll see we've got styles. This only shows up when a picture has been selected. So if we're on text, this won't show up. If we're on the background, it won't show up. Only when you see those white circles around. And then, just like before, if I want to put a frame around it, or if I want to change the shape, I can do the soft edge oval. See what it did? It converted it to an oval shape, even though it was a square picture. It cut out the corners. But also, if you look, let me zoom in to my picture, it fades the edge. It's not a clear-cut edge and overlaps some of the color of the picture with the color of my background. Okay, so you can do that for effect. And in PowerPoint, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I want to zoom back out. In PowerPoint, it really does add a nice effect to it. Stands out a lot. So in Word, it does too, if you're using that. And then the other thing you can do is you can overlay pictures over each other and create a new picture from it. And by the way, in the copyright law, that is one of the, I don't want to call it a loophole, but it's a loophole. But it is a way you can use somebody else's image. If you take that image and significantly alter it, like see how I stretched it and I've put it into a frame and things, if it's significant enough, you can call it your own, and then you don't have to ask permission because basically it's your creation. There is a lawsuit going on right now with the singer Prince on an image that somebody took a picture of, and she claimed it's her own picture and made a lot of changes to it. And the courts are deciding, where is that fine line? How much do you have to change to make it your own? So that'll be kind of interesting to follow. So things, not everything's decided quite yet in copyright law. So now that I've got an interesting picture at the end, I'm going to run the slideshow from the beginning. And let's see what kind of show we have. There we go, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4, our pros and cons, and finally our last slide. So I notice here that when I changed my layout, these didn't line up. So I got to fix that. So I'm going to finish the slideshow. By the way, during this show, if you ever want to stop it, you can hit the escape key on the keyboard and that'll exit out. So I said I want this laser eye surgery to be closer here under Patterson. Now you'll see here, as I'm doing it, my text box is off center. So I've got all that room over there. Since the text box doesn't show, I don't have to worry about it. I can just click on the background and just worry about this text and say, this is what I care about. How does this look? So if you want to, some people like to just try to keep things neat and tidy. You could go back and change that and shrink it in. Kind of like that. But it doesn't change anything in its effect. So now I want to see how that pops up. But again, I don't want to run the entire show. So I'm going to go to slide 6. I'm on slide 6. I'm going to use from current slide, which means now I don't have to go through the whole thing again. I click on from current slide. And see how it jumps straight to slide 6? Now I click, and there's my last slide. Well, I think that could be centered better. So remember I said that these placeholders are used at your discretion any way you like. So I'm going to bring this one down further. I'm going to bring this one over on top of it. And as it's kind of hard to see, but in my screen, I can see lines, guidelines, telling me where the center of the slide is. And that gives me more room to make this bigger and center that up right above it. There we go, got the adjustment. I'm going to start at slide 5 this time, just so I get a running start. So I clicked on slide 5. I'm going to select from current slide. There's slide 5. Yep, slide 6 and slide 7. Oh, much better. Click again, and it's done. And there we go. And just like with Microsoft Word and Excel, you don't have to hit the save button in Microsoft PowerPoint 365. It's saving as we go. So each change we made was automatically recorded, and it'll be there for us tomorrow. So any questions about our first presentation? So that's basically how they function. Now, the next steps are to add a little bit more animation to it. You can animate the slides, you can animate the transitions, and animate the graphics, and that becomes a lot of fun. And it makes it a lot more interesting when you're giving that presentation. So we'll work on that next. If there's no questions, we are done for the evening. Have a good night. And again, we'll record this and send it out to you tomorrow.